What if the world declared you insane just to silence the truth? She was young, brilliant, in love. And in less than a week, everything she knew was erased: her job, her name, her future. They accused her of stealing from sick children, labeled her delusional, locked her away in a private psychiatric facility. Then, she died. No funeral, no questions, no trace. But 5 years later, a woman named Evelyn Black appeared at a billionaire gala, poised, powerful, and carrying a secret so devastating it could bring down an empire. She knew too much, smiled too quietly, and walked the same halls as the people who once destroyed her. They didn't recognize her face, but they should have remembered her silence. Because Emma Wynne didn't die. She became something else. Before we begin this haunting journey of betrayal, revenge, and one mother's quiet war to reclaim her life and protect her daughter, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button if you love stories with deep emotion, chilling twists and endings you'll never forget. Now buckle up. What you're about to hear might change the way you look at trust forever. They didn't just steal her future, they erased her name, her voice, her existence. But something erased doesn't cease to exist. It only waits. The Vaughn Foundation towered above Manhattan like a monolith of wealth and reputation, a 20-story cathedral to polished philanthropy adorned with glass, steel, and self-congratulation. To the outside world, it was a beacon: scholarships, clinics, disaster relief, innovation labs. But inside its walls, secrets, power plays, and one woman who would come to learn exactly what it meant to be expendable. Her name was Emma Wynne, 26 years old, junior accountant, invisible, or so she thought. Emma's life was unremarkable by design. She took pride in being efficient, precise, quietly capable. She lived alone in a modest third-floor apartment in Queens, drank her coffee, black with exactly one sugar, and preferred spreadsheets to social gatherings. Her closet held 5 identical navy cardigans. Her life was deliberate, but none of that mattered the day she fell in love with Nathan Vaughn. Nathan, the only son of Margaret Vaughn, the formidable founder of the Vaughn Foundation. He was everything Emma was not: magnetic, effortlessly charming, a man raised in wealth, yet oddly untouched by its arrogance. He noticed Emma, not just in passing, not as a fleeting interest, but in moments that mattered. It began with late-night chats after quarterly audits. He'd find reasons to linger by her desk. He brought her coffee. He laughed at her jokes, even the bad ones. He asked questions that suggested he actually listened. She told herself not to fall. She was smarter than that. But when Nathan touched her arm during the company gala, lightly, deliberately, as if reminding her she wasn't invisible, she knew she already had. Their affair, if one could call it that, was discreet. No candlelit dinners or public declarations. Just small moments, stolen glances, half-written texts, never sent a weekend away under fake names. To Emma, it wasn't about grand gestures. It was about being seen. She had never imagined how wrong she was. It began innocuously, a set of line items in the Vaughn Foundation's disbursement records that didn't match historical patterns. Emma noticed them the way a hawk spots movement in still water, a missing signature, an account routed through a shell corporation with no tax ID, $320,000 earmarked for pediatric oncology programs had vanished. She pulled the files, rechecked every ledger. At first, she thought it was a mistake, but the deeper she dug, the worse it became. Someone had funneled money through Emma's own access credentials, all digitally signed, all verified, all pointing directly to her. But the final routing, a shadow account with ties to overseas firms that, when traced, circled back to none other than Margaret Vaughn. Emma was paralyzed. The implications were staggering: not just embezzlement, but a full-blown federal crime. In the face of the foundation, the woman who had received Humanitarian Awards magazine covers honorary degrees was behind it. Emma spent 2 sleepless nights staring at her ceiling. She thought about telling Nathan. But what could she say? Your mother's stealing from dying children and framing me for it. She knew what it meant to challenge power, but her conscience wouldn't let her walk away. So trembling, she submitted the report. Anonymous, encrypted, sent to the board's internal compliance officer through an off-site server. She didn't even use her home internet. 3 days later, she was arrested at dawn. They came in silence, 2 plainclothes detectives, firm but polite. She was still in her sleep shirt. The mascara she forgot to wash off the night before clung like bruises under her eyes. They let her put on slippers but no socks. Outside, her neighbors watched as she was led to an unmarked sedan, head bowed. At the station, she was informed of the charges: embezzlement, wire fraud, misuse of charitable funds. Her own name was on every document, her passwords, her access logs, her signature, albeit forged so well even she had to squint. Her phone was confiscated, her apartment searched, her email shut down. She asked for Nathan. He didn't come. At her arraignment, she scanned the courtroom, hoping, begging for someone. She knew someone to say this was all a mistake. But all she found was silence. Nathan was there, in the back row. And when she met his eyes, he looked away. It was the last time she ever saw him in public. Her court-appointed lawyer barely glanced at her case. The psychiatrist the prosecution brought in assessed her after 20 minutes of detached questioning. When she insisted she was innocent, he scribbled something down. 2 weeks later, she was deemed mentally unfit for trial. Ridgewell Psychiatric Institute was a facility wrapped in branding, healing, compassion, privacy. But for those who entered its double-locked doors, it was something else entirely. It was a holding cell for inconvenient lives. Emma was sedated before she even saw her room. They told her the meds were standard, just a little something to stabilize her sleep. But they dulled her thoughts, muddled her memories. Days bled into nights. She told them she was innocent. They increased her dosage. When she resisted group sessions, they restrained her. When she asked for a phone call, they claimed she was too volatile. When she stopped speaking altogether, they called it progress. By month 3, she had lost nearly 20 pounds. By month 5, her hair had thinned from stress. By month 7, she had stopped marking the days. And then one storm-drenched night, she was gone. The official record was clean. Cause of death: cardiac failure during a psychotic break. No autopsy, no outside verification. Her body was said to be cremated in-house. The ashes went unclaimed. There was no obituary. Margaret sent no condolences. Nathan never inquired. Emma Wynne was dead. But the dead don't forget. 5 years later, the Blackstone Financial Gala was the social event of the quarter. Hosted in a marble-walled atrium with ceilings high enough to trap clouds, it was the kind of place where reputations were polished, like the cutlery and gossip traveled faster than the champagne flowed. Everyone who was anyone was there. Politicians, media moguls, billionaire heirs, including, of course, the Vaughns. Margaret arrived with her signature poise in a charcoal Dior gown and pearls older than some nations. Nathan walked beside her, glass in hand, face expressionless. Time had added lines to his eyes but softened nothing of his guilt. And then she appeared. The room didn't pause, not at first. Evelyn Black didn't need the spotlight. She was the spotlight. Her navy gown caught the light in ways that seemed intentional, as though every seam had been cut to conceal strength beneath elegance. She moved with surgical grace, not like someone entering a room, but like someone claiming it. At her side was a girl, perhaps 5, with long chestnut curls and a silk ribbon in her hair. Hope. And beside them, towering and unreadable, was Lucas Hart, quiet, deliberate, dangerous in the way statues are dangerous when they move. No one recognized her. Not yet. But Evelyn knew every face, every betrayal, every blind eye that let a girl be thrown away. She didn't approach the Vaughns. She didn't need to. Her presence was a scalpel. Nathan's eyes brushed past her once, then again, and on the third time, something behind his face shifted. Recognition or a ghost? She smiled gently, not seductively, not vindictively, just enough to whisper, "You forgot me, but I remember you." As she floated across the marble floor, guests leaned into her orbit. A senator, a venture capitalist, a retired diplomat. Evelyn knew them all. She had studied the Vaughn Foundation's network like scripture. And somehow, impossibly, she knew every blind spot in their financial firewall. Every offshore funnel, every hacked secure vault where Margaret buried secrets under shell corporations and charity fronts. And yet, there was no birth certificate, no driver's license, no social security number tied to Evelyn Black prior to 2 years ago. She was a shadow with a $1 million smile. And as she whispered something into Lucas's ear, who then vanished with hope into the crowd, Evelyn turned her head slightly. Her eyes locked with Nathan Vaughn's. He blinked. She smiled. And in the next second she was gone, swallowed into the chandelier light and murmured ambition of the room. No one remembered what day it was, but Evelyn did. Exactly 5 years, to the minute, since Emma Wynne died. And while no one questioned how a woman who had never worked in finance could outmaneuver a dynasty, the audience knew. They saw the flicker, the shadow, the unspoken question: who is Evelyn Black and what exactly is she here for? She didn't need to scream. She let the silence do the bleeding. Evelyn Black was everywhere and nowhere. In just 3 months, she'd bought into 3 firms that had once been strategic partners of the Vaughn Foundation. Quiet acquisitions, silent mergers. The names didn't matter, the leverage did. And now when Margaret Vaughn picked up the phone for support, her calls went to Evelyn's boardrooms. No one knew where Evelyn came from, but her ascent was undeniable. She'd become the whispered name in financial circles. Unflinching, untouchable, untraceable. She wore her wealth with restraint, clean lines, soft fabrics, expensive, but never flashy. Her power didn't announce itself. It moved like a phantom, shifting numbers, redirecting loyalty, freezing assets just long enough to remind people who now held the leash. Meanwhile, the Vaughn Foundation was bleeding. Funding that had once been guaranteed yearly grants from loyal institutions, long-standing relationships suddenly vanished. Government subsidies were delayed. Political allies turned indifferent. A few tabloids even ran quiet stories about potential misconduct in old Vaughn accounts, citing anonymous sources and leaked memos. Margaret Vaughn paced her office in silence, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her phone. She didn't believe in coincidence, especially not when Evelyn Black began appearing at events she herself used to dominate. She hired a private investigator within the week. Nathan, on the other hand, was slipping. Every time he saw Evelyn, something twisted in his chest. Not attraction, not quite. It was déjà vu dipped in dread. The way she looked at him always half a second longer than politeness allowed, like she was waiting for him to remember something he never knew he'd forgotten. And then there was the girl. Hope. She couldn't have been more than 5. Sharp, curious, with wide eyes and a habit of clinging to Evelyn's side like a shadow. No one knew who her father was. Most assumed it was Lucas Hart, Evelyn's ever-present business partner, and some speculated her lover. But something didn't fit. Once during a fundraiser at the Metropolitan Club, a senator's wife leaned down and complimented Hope's charm bracelet, a small leather band with faint initials etched into the side in each. The woman asked what the letters meant. Hope shrugged. "It's just old. Mommy says I shouldn't wear it outside, but I like it." Evelyn's gaze snapped toward them so fast it drew silence. She gently took the bracelet off Hope's wrist and smiled too tightly. "Some things belong to the past," she said, "and the past should stay buried." No one understood what she meant, not then. But behind closed doors, Evelyn opened a drawer in her study. Inside, under lock and key, was a flash drive, a recording she had never played aloud. Not even for Lucas. It was a conversation captured years ago. Emma's voice, raw, scared. And Nathan's. "They'll destroy you, Emma. Then tell them the truth. Tell them I didn't touch that money." Silence. "Nathan, I can't." She'd listened to that audio 100 times, not because she needed the reminder, but because pain sharpens purpose. Lucas warned her one night standing in the apartment that overlooked Central Park. "They're watching you now. Margaret's not stupid." Evelyn didn't look up from her wine glass. "She underestimated me once. She won't live long enough to do it twice." He paused. "What about Nathan?" She turned slowly. "What about him? He's not like her. You know that. I knew a man who said he loved me, and then chose silence when I needed him to scream. That man died a long time ago." Lucas said nothing. He never pressed further. He owed her too much. Later that week, Evelyn's legal team sent anonymous dossiers to a trio of investigative journalists. Included were decades of financial anomalies within the Vaughn Foundation, most too old to matter, some still active. The headlines began to bloom. "The cracks in the crown, Vaughn Empire under scrutiny, missing millions. How a children's charity became a power machine who really holds the purse strings." Margaret knew exactly what this was: war. Nathan wasn't so sure. One night, after too many sleepless hours, he pulled up archived employee records. Vaughn Foundation had thousands of entries, but one name haunted him: Emma Wynne. No social media, no online footprint, no obituary, not even a death certificate he could find publicly. It didn't make sense. And Evelyn, she moved like someone who'd already lived through fire. He started digging. It wasn't the silence that haunted him. It was the memory of a voice he chose to forget. Nathan Vaughn hadn't slept in days. At first, he told himself it was just stress. The foundation's finances were crumbling. The media was circling like vultures, and Margaret was unraveling behind closed doors. But that wasn't it. It was her, Evelyn Black. She didn't just remind him of Emma, she made his skin remember her. The way Emma would tap her pen when she was nervous. The way she tilted her head when asking a question. The quiet intensity in her gaze. He had tried to shake it off for weeks, but tonight he couldn't anymore. He dug through the foundation's archive files, searching for Emma Wynn's personnel record. But something was off. The access log had been wiped. No exit interview, no termination document, no severance package. Just vanished, as if she had never existed. He searched her apartment building next, driving across the city late at night, parking across from the stoop she used to walk him to. The buzzer didn't work. A woman in a bathrobe answered the door and said no one named Emma had lived there in years. Nathan begged for 5 minutes inside. The woman allowed it. He stood in the living room like a ghost, retracing his own steps. That's when he noticed something on the side of the door frame, faint scratches, almost invisible. E. Wynne. And beneath that, a child's scrawl. Hope was here. Nathan's chest tightened. The next day, he showed up unannounced at Evelyn's public lecture on nonprofit accountability. He didn't speak, just watched. She never looked at him, but the way she ignored him, it was too practiced. When the lecture ended, he waited outside. She stepped into her car without acknowledging him. The windows were tinted, but he could see the faint silhouette of the little girl in the back seat, holding a worn leather bracelet. He followed them. They drove to a townhouse on the Upper East Side, gated, discreet, pristine. He waited across the street until the lights went out. Then for hours he sat with the same question burning in his chest. Could it be the next morning, Margaret Vaughn received an anonymous package? Inside were printed bank statements, old audio recordings, and a single photo, a blurry surveillance image of Evelyn standing in a hallway with a security badge for Ridgewell Psychiatric Institute. On the back of the photo, written in red ink, "You buried her alive. She's digging back up." Margaret went pale. She rushed to her private office and called the head of Ridgewell. "I thought the girl was dead." The man hesitated. All paperwork said so. But there was one staffer who disappeared the same week, a low-level orderly, Lucas Hart. Margaret dropped the phone. That night, Evelyn stood on the balcony of her townhouse, arms crossed, watching the city blink like a dying star. Lucas joined her quietly. "They're starting to connect the dots," he said. "They were always going to," she replied, her voice flat. Lucas leaned against the railing. "We could walk away now. I can wipe our trail, relocate. You've already destroyed them financially. You don't need to keep going." Evelyn turned toward him, her eyes colder than December glass. "I'm not done. You're bleeding yourself dry, Evelyn. You haven't been sleeping." She stepped closer, almost whispering. "You found me in a hole, Lucas, strapped to a bed, forgotten, starving. You think I'll stop just because they're finally starting to feel what they did to me?" He didn't answer. He knew better than to ask for mercy. Meanwhile, Nathan spiraled. His memories twisted in on themselves, the moments he ignored Emma's pleas, the way he froze when she needed him most. He remembered the day she was arrested, how he let his mother convince him to stay silent. "You don't owe her anything," she had said. "She's nothing without us." But he had owed her everything. He remembered the bracelet. It had been a Christmas gift. He had it custom-made with their initials and the word hope, not as a name, but as a promise. The fact that Evelyn's daughter wore it was either a coincidence so cruel it broke reality or something far more terrible. He drove to Ridgewell. The site was abandoned now, shut down after a class action lawsuit over patient mistreatment. The walls were tagged with graffiti, medical chairs rusted in place. But in a storage room in the back, he found old personnel logs. Lucas Hart, hired in 2018, disappeared in 2019. No forwarding address. He found Emma's file too. redacted, half-burned, but one note remained at the bottom in pen, declared deceased, cremation paperwork filed, no body provided, orderly reported missing same day, name L. Hart. Nathan staggered back, and in that moment he finally knew. Evelyn Black didn't just remind him of Emma Wynne, she was her. Some ghosts are born in silence. Others call you Dad. Nathan Vaughn stood across the street from Evelyn's townhouse, heart pounding against his ribs like a warning he wished he could ignore. He hadn't slept. He hadn't spoken to his mother in days. And yet here he was, gripping a worn bracelet in his hand, the same one he once gave to a woman who, as far as the world knew, was dead. But she wasn't. She was in there behind those cream-colored curtains and iron-forged gates, alive, changed, watching everything, and raising a daughter. The idea clawed at him like a fever. If Evelyn was Emma and now he was sure she was then, who was Hope, that bracelet was too specific. NEH didn't stand for anything but Nathan Emma Hope, a future they never got to have. He had to know. With trembling hands, he crossed the street, buzzed the gate, and waited. No answer. He pressed again, longer this time. Still nothing. But then the lock clicked. The door swung open, and there she was. Not Evelyn, not Emma, but the little girl, Hope. She looked up at him with wide ocean blue eyes and messy curls tied back in a green ribbon. In her hand, she held a plastic dinosaur. On her wrist was the bracelet. She blinked. "Are you the man from the building across the street?" Nathan couldn't speak. Hope tilted her head. "Mommy says not to talk to strangers, but I remember you. You were in my dreams." His voice finally emerged, cracked and unsteady. "Is your mom home?" Hope shook her head. "She went to get coffee. Lucas is with her." Nathan hesitated at the door, unsure whether to step in. Hope turned without waiting and walked into the living room. "You can come in. I'll show you something." His feet moved before his brain did. The townhouse smelled faintly of lavender and cedarwood, the kind of scent Emma used to keep in her apartment. The curtains filtered golden light across oak floors. Art lined the walls. A cello stood in the corner. And on the mantel, a photo frame faced inward, turned deliberately away from view. Hope climbed onto the couch and opened a small wooden box on the coffee table. "This is Mommy's secret box," she whispered. "She told me never to open it unless it was very, very important." She looked at Nathan. "I think this is important." Inside the box were three things: a faded photograph of Emma and Nathan smiling beside the Hudson River, a hospital bracelet with the name Emma Wynne, and the leather bracelet this time with the inscription facing up, NEH. Love never leaves. Nathan sank to his knees. His entire body went cold. "Who?" He began, barely breathing. "Who is your father?" "Hope." The little girl frowned. "Mommy said he had to leave. She said he didn't know I was coming." Tears burned his eyes. "Do you know his name?" She nodded. "She says I look like him. His name was..." She paused, then grinned. "Nathan." The front door slammed. Nathan froze. Evelyn stood in the entryway, a coffee cup dropping from her hand to the hardwood floor, shattering into porcelain dust. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes, those eyes were made of thunder. Hope turned and smiled. "Mommy, he was here." Evelyn's voice was razor thin. "Hope, go to your room." But now, the little girl scurried upstairs, dinosaur clutched to her chest. Nathan rose slowly. "She's mine, isn't she?" Evelyn didn't answer. She stepped forward instead, her heels clicking like war drums across the floor. "I asked you a question," he said. She stared at him. "You don't get to ask questions. She's my daughter." "She's my daughter," Evelyn snapped. "I raised her. I bled for her. I fought to keep her safe while you..." Her voice broke. "You let them bury me alive." Nathan was shaking. "I didn't know." "You did." Her voice was now calm, dangerously so. I begged you to stand up for me, and you turned away." Nathan stepped closer. "If I had known you were pregnant, you think that would have changed anything?" She laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "You didn't believe me when I said I was innocent. Why would you believe me if I said I was carrying your child?" He was crying now, open and raw. "I was scared. My mother." She cut him off. Your mother tried to erase me. You helped her. And now you want what Nathan a second chance redemption. He nodded breathless. Yes, whatever it takes. I'll take responsibility. I'll fight for her. For both of you. She looked at him for a long, still moment, then walked to the fireplace, picked up the photo frame facing the wall, and handed it to him. It was a photo of Hope as a baby, in a hospital bed. Beside her lay Emma, frail unconscious, with tubes in her arms, and a birth certificate folded on the nightstand. I didn't even have time to write your name before they took me away, she whispered. They tried to make me forget who I was, but I remembered everything, every night, every minute, every silence from you. Nathan knelt beside her. Let me try. Please, let me be her father. Evelyn's face softened for a second, then turned to steel. You already were. The moment you said nothing in that courtroom, the moment you let them call me a thief, a liar, a lunatic. He looked down. What can I do? She stepped back, eyes blazing. You can leave, and never come near her again. I won't. I can't. She deserves to know me. She deserves peace. Something you never gave me. He looked up, desperation raw in his voice. Please. She called me her dream. Evelyn's voice broke again, but this time it didn't crack. It cut. And I won't let you become her nightmare. A long silence settled between them. Then from the top of the stairs, a small voice. Mommy Hope stood holding her bracelet again. Evelyn turned, trying to steady her voice. Yes, baby, am I really named after your Hope? Evelyn walked to her, knelt, and held her close. You're not named after what I hoped for. You're named after what proved I was still alive. Hope smiled and hugged her mother. Then softly, is he really my daddy? Evelyn didn't look at Nathan when she answered. Yes, but that doesn't mean he gets to stay. Nathan took a step toward them, but Evelyn stood up and placed herself between them. This is where your story ends, Nathan. He wanted to protest, but her eyes silenced him. It was done. And when he left, when the door finally clicked shut behind him, Evelyn exhaled a breath she'd been holding for 5 years. Lucas came down the stairs minutes later, silent. She told him, Evelyn said. Lucas nodded. Are you okay? No, she said, but I'm free. Vengeance is not the opposite of justice. Silence is. The headlines came first. Federal charges filed against Vaughn Foundation for misappropriation of funds. Margaret Vaughn under indictment, facing prison time. The empire built on charity, now crumbling. Evelyn watched the news play out from her living room, bathed in the cold glow of the television. The mask was no longer necessary. The world had caught up to the truth. The walls of Margaret Vaughn's empire were crashing down, not with fire or chaos, but with cold, calculated ruin. The kind she had once inflicted on a 26-year-old accountant. The kind that left scars no surgeon could erase. Hope sat cross-legged beside her, carefully gluing dried leaves into a notebook. She was humming a low, aimless tune that made Evelyn's chest ache. You're quiet today, the girl said. Evelyn forced a smile. Just tired. Hope nodded as if she understood the kind of exhaustion that didn't come from sleeplessness, but from living too hard for too long. Lucas entered the room with 2 cups of tea, setting one beside Evelyn. It's done, he said. She looked at him. You're sure? He nodded. Margaret's legal team has started cutting deals. She'll serve time. They'll freeze the foundation's accounts. Nathan's already resigned. Evelyn turned back to the TV. Margaret Vaughn was being escorted out of her home in cuffs, her designer coat soaked in rain, mascara streaked. Still proud, still silent. The reporter's voice crackled over the image. No comment yet from the Vaughn family, but sources close to the investigation confirmed that federal agents have uncovered over 10 years of falsified grant reporting amounting to more than $30 million in diverted funds. Evelyn picked up the remote and turned the TV off. There was no satisfaction, no rush of triumph, only silence. Lucas leaned forward. We can leave now, if we want to. I've arranged everything. Evelyn didn't respond. Hope looked up. Leave where? To the mountains, Lucas said gently. Or the coast, maybe a lake, somewhere new. Will Daddy be there? Evelyn tensed. Lucas froze. The question hung in the air like smoke after a shot. Hope looked between them. I liked him. Evelyn's voice when it came was quiet. He's not part of our story, sweetheart. Not anymore. Hope stared at her mother for a long moment, then slowly turned back to her notebook. Evelyn closed her eyes. 2 nights later, Evelyn received a letter. Not an email, not a subpoena, a handwritten letter. No return address, just her name in familiar script, Emma. She opened it alone in her study. Emma, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me for writing this. I don't know if I deserve to be heard, but I need you to know I remember. I remember the courtroom, the look in your eyes when they took you, the moment I said nothing when I should have said everything. I've lived every day since then with your voice in my head, not the one that begged me for help, the one that said nothing, that just stared at me like I was already dead to you. You were right to hate me, but there's someone else now, a little girl who doesn't know the weight we carry, and I want to know her, not to fix what I broke. I can't, but because I can't pretend she doesn't exist. If you'll let me, I'd like to try, not for me, for her. Nathan. She sat in silence for nearly an hour. The she burned the letter. A week later, Evelyn stood in front of Margaret Vaughn. It was a visitation room, neutral beige walls, bolted table, 2 chairs. No cameras, no guards inside, just glass between them and the corridor. Margaret looked older now, not broken but exhausted, as if age had finally decided to settle in after decades of avoidance. Emma, she said calmly. Evelyn didn't respond. Margaret gestured to the guards who stepped back, leaving them alone. You look... Well, Margaret said. Evelyn tilted her head. That's not the word I'd use. Margaret smiled faintly. I suppose you're here to watch me rot. No, Evelyn replied. I'm here so I never have to see you again. Margaret leaned forward. You've won. What more do you want? Evelyn met her gaze. You thought burying me would make me disappear, but I didn't vanish. I became something you couldn't see until it was too late. Margaret studied her for a long moment. Emma was soft. She cried when children cried. She brought sandwiches for janitors. She thought love was stronger than blood. Evelyn didn't blink, and now Margaret asked. Evelyn leaned in. Now I don't cry. A pause. Then Margaret chuckled, bitter and low. You're not like her anymore. No, Evelyn said, standing. Emma died in that hospital. You killed her. Margaret raised an eyebrow. And what are you now? Evelyn turned for the door. The answer to that, she said, is none of your business. Back home, Lucas was waiting. You told her, he said. No, Evelyn replied. I told me. That night she packed a bag. Just one. Not for running, not for hiding, just for moving forward. She found Hope asleep, clutching the dinosaur again, her feet poking out from under the blanket. Evelyn kissed her forehead and whispered, We're done here. Lucas loaded the car quietly. No destination, just away. But before they left, Evelyn made one stop. She parked outside Nathan's apartment, same building he'd lived in for years. She didn't go in, didn't even call. She left a small envelope with the doorman. Inside was a single photograph, the one Hope had drawn that week, a house, a sun, and 3 stick figures. One tall, one medium, one small, all holding hands. On the back, Evelyn had written, You don't get to be her father, but you don't get to forget her either. Live with both. She didn't leave a return address. They drove for hours, mountains in the distance, sky turning lavender. Hope asked once, Where are we going? Evelyn smiled. Where no one knows our name. Hope thought for a moment. Will I get a new name? No, Evelyn said. You'll get the only one you need. Silence passed. Then Hope asked the question Evelyn had always feared. Are you Emma? Evelyn's hands tightened on the wheel. She didn't turn. Yes. Hope was quiet, then nodded. Okay, that was it. Acceptance. Not forgiveness, just love. They reached a small cabin near a lake by morning. Lucas had prepared it months ago just in case. Evelyn stepped onto the wooden porch, smelled the pine in the air, and felt something she hadn't in years, peace. Hope ran ahead into the trees. Lucas stood beside her. What now? Evelyn breathed in deep. Now we live. No more ghosts, only the ones we choose to keep. Lucas paused. Do I get to stay? She looked at him. You're the only one who stayed when I was already gone. She reached for his hand. And I don't want to lose that. Epilogue. 1 year later, a new name on a new mailbox, a new school enrollment under Hope Black, a coffee shop that greets Evelyn with good morning. No headlines, no secrets. Just a woman and her daughter learning what it means to exist without being hunted. One day, Hope brought home a school assignment, Who Inspires You? She wrote my mom, because she was supposed to be dead, but she came back, not to hurt people, but to protect me. I don't know everything about her past, and maybe I never will, but she tells the truth now, and that's what heroes do. Evelyn read it once, folded it, and tucked it into a drawer. Next to it was a leather bracelet, still worn, still real, but now finally at peace.